Dylan from Luxury lives on, and I hope everyone's doing well today. Now, we're all used to the sad word widow, but usually it's connected to heroic men dying in war, not, well, stockbrokers dying in Porsches during the 80s. You see, that's a whole nother story. In fact, today is the story of the Porsche 930 Turbo, aka the Widowmaker. Before the main demographic of the person driving this car was either a lawyer or a dentist, well, the owners of these cars can be described with one word: brave. Wait a second, no, sorry, two words: brave and lunatics. Porsche 911s in general were tricky and difficult cars to drive. The main reason being is, well, we didn't first of all have anti-crashing devices pre-installed, and then second of all, Porsche went along and did, well, the most un-German thing they possibly could have ever done is, well, put the engine in the rear. Now that did one good thing: it created a ton of rear end grip, but it also did one bad thing: it created an incredible amount of rear end weight bias. So when you did have a grip, it was all nice and dandy, but when it slipped, it was gone forever, and so were you. But here's the crazy part. See, not only did Porsche put their engine at the rear, they decided, well, let's slap a turbo on it. And that's exactly where the name came from. In fact, just a side note, in the 80s, things were kind of named because they sounded cool and they really had absolutely no meaning behind them, except for this word. Oh shit, I understand that doesn't look too good. You see it says Turbo Carrera at the back. Allow me to explain for 1 second. You see, in America, for some weird reason, branding reasons, they called it a Turbo Carrera for a few years. Then it went to a turbo, so bear with me. Let's pretend that script's not there. And hey, it's a hell of a lot better than the Porsche Cayenne Turbo S E-Hybrid, whatever crap they put on the end of these cars nowadays. So yes, this word turbo here had a ton of meaning. You see, it meant certain death. But don't let me tell you, let's show you in a, well, realistic, mastered animation of true and actual events that took place. Alright, so we have our turbo and we have our road. Now, for all intents and purposes, let's say the driver in this scenario is Billy. Billy is a stockbroker. He just made a ton of money, so he decided to buy a brand new 911 turbo because he thought it would look fancy. However, like most stockbrokers, he has no idea how to drive, and that makes him perfect for the casualty in this scenario. Now, Billy is accelerating, going to the corner, letting off, and this is where things get interesting. So in any 911, obviously you have a rear engine, therefore a rear weight bias, which naturally causes these cars to oversteer and lose the tail. However, as Billy's powering out of the corner, there's another thing that makes things even worse. The fact that this is a turbo, and back then, well, turbos weren't so sophisticated, so you have something called turbo lag. He's in second gear, 3,000 RPM, and suddenly the turbo kicks in, and he's got a lot more power than expected. So now the turbo's acted as almost like a catalyst on top of the fact that it's a rear engine car. So as he's driving through, he's oversteering and loses complete control of the car, tumbles, and Billy dies. Now, if that incredibly realistic example wasn't evidence enough of how dangerous these things were, well, let me give you an example of how people felt in the 80s. If you were to see a nice stockbroker driving past you in his brand new 911 with his arm out the window smirking, you see, you wouldn't be jealous. All you would be thinking is, my God, this guy doesn't stand a chance. And unfortunately, it is the sheer amount of deaths that ended up taking place in this 930 Turbo that ended up giving it the name, the Widowmaker. Alright guys, now to do a quick walk around of this unbelievable 1976 Porsche Turbo Carrera. I mean, it's just absolutely outrageous. The cool thing about it is it just screams 80s. I remember just thinking of, well, what would clubs be like in the 80s? And of course you would have this parked outside next to a Countach and a Testarossa. That is the trio of the signature 80s cars. And it's all evident, obviously, in this giant whale tail. It's super cool. It's finished in, well, an amazing blue color, if you guys could notice. Very, very unusual. That's what's really going crazy with these cars nowadays. They didn't make a ton of them, but if you can find a unique spec like this, it ends up being worth even more. And not to mention, obviously, the gray interior, which we'll check in a second. Now, some key features on it. Fog lights are pretty cool. It's got the washers that are little like hoses sticking out. Obviously, these older Porsches are plastic crazy. So you have the bumpers, you have the rubber everywhere. A trademark of these turbos, of course, are the stone guards that you always see, and then the Fuchs wheels as well. In addition to that, these silly bumpers again, more rubber and plastic, typical of the era for America, just screwing up all the safety standards. You have the one-side double exhaust. So if you ever want to see if a guy's screwed with his car, his OCD made him want to make it symmetrical like all cars today, but that's the quirkiness of it. It just has it on that one side. It has that trademark center light, which just looks so cool as well. So reminiscent of the 80s. And then, of course, you have wider arches on the turbo variant as well. And it just looks really pretty with these chrome accents. The chrome around the rims as well. And it's just a very, very cool car. You obviously have the painted covers as well over here. And then it looks like an original badge. Now this car has about 57,000 miles, which is not a ton considering its age, but you know, it's a good driver car. And well, let's take a look on the interior real quick. So I think this gray really pops on the blue. Again, it's nice to have some uniqueness nowadays. When everyone just has a silver Porsche or a red Ferrari. It smells so good in here. I wish you guys could get transferred over with that smell, obviously. But it's a 4-speed, kind of interesting. Obviously, I would have preferred more gears than that. It's a very busy dashboard. It's kind of funny, classic old radio that you would see in many of these cars. And well, a part that I really like is that you just, of course, very Porsche, you have the center tack just right in the middle. The most important thing, what are your revs at? And well, it's just really cool to see. It's a very focused interior. I'm interested to see what the clutch feels like, actually. Kind of a clutch nerd. Who else is a clutch nerd here? Okay, it's deep, relatively hard to push in. It's nice though, very usable, and it's got enough feel where you know you feel like you're in an actual sports car. Now, as I said, this is the turbo variant, so it's obviously quite a bit faster as well. Now it has 245 horsepower, and it's just honestly plenty enough. The funny thing about it, obviously, is in the RPM range, you end up, you know, hitting the turbo around 3,000–4,000 RPM, and that's obviously where it's dangerous, in those corners where you have unfortunate widows being made. But wow, what a pretty spec. Just unbelievable to see. Alright guys, so that is it. Wow, what an unbelievable opportunity, not only to get in front of, well, an iconic car such as a 930 Turbo, which when you think turbo, this is the car you think. And not only that, to have it in such a unique, interesting spec just made it all that much more fun to film. And I have to thank Symbolic International, of course, for giving me the opportunity to film it. Their inventory is ridiculous. You go to most dealerships like Ferrari, and look, don't get me wrong, everyone loves seeing Ferraris, but it's usually the same car, 488, 488, 488. You go to this dealership and it's just fun. It's like going to a bloody museum, honestly. And I'm not even just blowing, air up their skirt here. It's really a lot of fun to come here. It has to be probably my favorite dealership to film at, not only because of the cars they have, but because they're so kind to me in facilitating the cars. So big thank you to them. Check them in the link below. Guys, if you want to see me on more things, I'm on, of course, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you want to see what type of equipment I use, check the Amazon links below. Guys, if you like the video, goddamn plane. If you liked the video, give it a like. If you want to see more of my content, please do subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.